Hello and welcome to Scary Town. This week we're going back to Horrorland to review Creep from the Deep. I'll show you cover here. Now, there's something wrong with this cover. And I'll go to it in a little bit. I'll explain why this cover makes me very upset after reading the book. And so, this story is actually a sequel to Deep Trouble 1 and 2 from the classic Goosebumps series. I've never actually read them, so I can't really comment on whether I like them or not. It still involves the same three characters, a brother and sister, Sheena and Billy Deep, and their grandfather, Dr. Deep, who is a marine biologist. This story, there was one thing that really made me upset about it. It involves the cover. And again, the cover. You see this monster. It looked really cool. I was going to pick up this book anyways because I'm going to review the series, but it looked really cool. It just pops out at you. And I was reading the book and I'm waiting. There's certain moments where like, oh, the monster's going to pop out. And then it's nowhere do you see this monster. It's nothing. In the back of the book, it mentions nothing about it. Though it does explain that it's really about this undead sea captain. And he's coming for revenge or whatever. So that made me very upset. They go down in this sub called a deep diver, and they really like to play into that, their last name being Deep, like Deep Trouble, a Creep from the Deep, that kind of thing. It's fun. I like the wordplay, so it doesn't really bother me. And Goosebumps books are cheesy by nature, so it's fine. So they go way down in the ocean, and the sub is like rocked by this. There's this black inky substance covers the front of the ship, and all of a sudden like the trolls are going crazy and the sub's like nosediving, and the kids are like freaking out, and they look around and they can't find Dr. Deep. He is like mysteriously disappeared. Though the kids were instructed how to pilot the ship, and it's pretty much like driving a car. It's not that difficult. So, but it still have problems. So like the sub is nosediving, and it just so happens it crashes into something, and it happens to be this pirate ship that's been lost for 200 years called the Scarlet Skull, which they were originally like trying to find, and nobody's been able to find it, and then they just happen to crash into it. And then all these pirates that are like, they're just like skeletons, and like start latching themselves onto the ship and trying to like break the glass and to get in. And they look like very angry that they were disturbed. And the kids frantically work with the controls, but eventually they're able to rise the sub into the surface. And so they use the periscope, and they're like looking around, and they find that a little bit off in the distance there's an island. And so they're like, Dr. Deep is still missing, so they're like, well, maybe he made it into the beach somehow, like, I don't know. And so Sheena jumps out into the water and waits for Billy to jump in as well. But as he jumps off, he bumps his leg, causing it to get like bruised up. And so once they get onto the beach, he can stand, but he has trouble walking. So he finds this plank of wood on the beach and uses it as a crutch. And so he's able to slowly walk along. And as they're looking forward, they see a a few feet away that there's footprints in the sand, and they're like automatically assume like, hey, these could possibly be Dr. Deep's footprints. So let's follow him and see what happens. And so they follow the footprints, and then all of a sudden they're dropped into this pit. It's a sand trap. And then they see that the pirates from earlier are like all surrounding the hole. And then they throw down this rope ladder. And so they're like, they're going to get us no matter what. They're going to either come down and grab us, or we can just go up there and meet them and then see if we can figure out a way out of this situation. They go up there and they see all the pirates. Like, some of them are just like the skeletons, and some of them have like parts of flesh hanging off their bones. Like a guy has like part of his face like hanging off. And then out of the crowd of pirates, the captain comes up, and he has like this red and black pirate's outfit, and he has one leg. And so Captain Ben comes out, the leader of the pirates, and he has their grandpa, Dr. Deep, there. He's bound and gagged, and he points to them saying, "You have what's mine, and I want it back. And I'll let your grandfather go if you just give me back what you have taken from me." And the kids are just kind of bewildered, and like they haven't taken anything. And like, we don't know what you're talking about. Just let her grandfather go. We can work this out. And Captain Ben's not having any of this, and he's still very insistent, like, just give me back what you've taken from me, And so the kids are just like, forget this, and then they're gonna run and then maybe figure something out somewhere just to get away from these guys. And so as they're running through the jungle, they bump into these two older men who are like surprised to see them. And so it's like, what are you guys running from? And then they explain, they're like, oh, we're running from these undead pirates. And they're like, undead pirates? They're like, well, what are you talking about? Like, the kids are assuming that these guys have been around this island long enough to know that there's undead pirates, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And so it takes them a while to convince these guys that the undead pirates are like a real thing. And they're like, and the kids also mention the Scarlet Skull and the treasure. The guys are like, we'll cut you a deal. Just show us where exactly the ship is in the water, and then all we want to do is just take a picture of the treasure. We don't want to actually keep it, because the island, the people that live here, it belongs to them. After that, we'll help you get back to your ship, and we'll figure out a way to help you get Dr. Deep back from these pirates. And so they run off, take a small little boat they left on the beach, and back to their ship. And they basically direct them like, okay, this is where the ship is. And then they get some scuba equipment. They go down, grab the treasure chest, and Sheena is kind of snooping around because he still feels that there's something off about these guys. She can't really explain it. It's just a hunch. And she sees these two black duffel bags. And Billy's like, hey, we shouldn't be prying into their stuff, And then Sheena's like, come on, Billy, like, there's something wrong about these guys. I just feel it. And so she unzips one of the duffel bags and sees there's a bunch of rifles. And it's like, and she unzips the other one, and it's like what's going on here? There's no photography equipment whatsoever. these guys were lying to us, and then we gotta escape from here, because once they come back, they're gonna try to kill us or something. And then as soon as they're about to jump off board, the two guys come back, just telling from like the look on their faces, especially Sheena, they know the jig is up, and they brought the treasure chest there, and they just drop it. Like, okay, so we're not photographers, we're actually, and then they do like a reveal from Scooby-Doo, like they pull off these apparently they're rotor masks, and then they pull off the mask and reveal that they are also undead pirates. They were the ones that originally laid claim to the treasure, and it is Captain Ben and his crew that had stolen the treasure from them. And all this while they've been searching for the treasure, and now they finally found it. And so they're grateful, but they're like, we no longer have any use for you kids. So off to Davy Jones' locker for you, and then they kick them off board so they can drown. They're able to stay afloat long enough to see one of the guys. There's this golden skull that's like on the center in the front of the chest, and it has this red jewel like a ruby in the skull's mouth. And as soon as his hand touches it, it sends out like this huge beam of light that just spreads out and just kind of like fills the sky. And as soon as they're hit by this, they disintegrate into dust. And so the kids climb back up on the ship, and then out of nowhere, this is like one of the moments where like, oh, the monster's actually going to show up. And like, so now Captain Ben's ship rises up, and then he's all there with his crew, and Dr. Deep is still there. Not sure how logically all this worked, but whatever. And so the kids pilot the ship and try to move it out of the way, headed towards the beach. And then Captain Ben's is coming after them in his ship. And then he's still like yelling at them, just give me back what's mine. And it's like I want it back. And then the kids are like motioning at the treasure chest like, hey, we have your treasure. This is what you wanted, right? And then he's like, no, that's nice that you found my treasure, but that's not what I want. And then finally Billy puts two and two together. The only thing that they have is the plank of wood that they found on the beach. And so this whole time, they could have just resolved all this by just giving Captain Ben the plank of wood, because he said, you have what's mine and I just want it back. The only thing they took is the plank of wood on the beach. If they stopped and just thought about this, they could just avoided all this mess. They never would have ran into those two pirates. They never would have been in mortal danger once they realized these guys were going to try to kill them. It's silly. It just made me facepalm. It's like, I can't believe this, So Billy's just like, oh, you wanted a plank of wood, and he remembers Dr. Deep had told them earlier in the story how to properly shoot a spear gun. And you have to be like real patient when you're using it, and then right for the right moment to shoot it into the water. And so he uses the same technique to launch the plank of wood like a javelin, and it pierces Captain Ben in the chest. He just hits him like a vampire with a stake. And it hurts him. And he just like crumbles into like bones and dust. Then also like the rest of the ship starts like, also deteriorating and just like crumbling, and so do the pirates. After all that, the ship is just gone, and the kids dive and rescue Dr. Deep, bringing him aboard, and they gather their senses and like, okay, Dr. Deep goes back to the sub and then brings it over so they can put the treasure chest in there. He tells them he's figured out what's what's happened and why is nobody's been able to find the Scarlet Skull this whole entire time is that they are currently in this dead zone. That's what that inky substance flashed over the sub. It transported them into this zone where everything's dead. Which brings up something that bothered me. The pirates, pretending to be photographers, had these rubber masks on. Why were they in disguise? If everything is dead here, who are they trying to fool? It seemed very convenient that they had the disguises to fool the kids. Like, did they somehow see the kids off in the distance? You know, it's too convenient. It's whatever. Anyways, so they dive deep down where they believe they were last time, and they find the inky substance and they plow right through it, and then they're through the wormhole or whatever it is and transported, and then they rise back up to the surface and they see off in the distance that their ship is there and everything's normal. But then once they go over to check the treasure chest, they find it's gone, and the only things left is that ruby, that jewel. At first they're like, don't touch it, it's, you know, but it's like, it doesn't have any power here, Dr. Deep says. It's like, we're in the land of the living, not the dead, so it should have no power over us. And so Sheena like picks it up and puts it in her palm, and it's fine. It ends as Sheena's messing with the radio to call the ship, and the radio ahead saying like, we're back. And then, but all they hear is this chanting of the pirates. It's old pirate song or something. It's kind of like eerie. So like they're thinking like, oh no, you know, our troubles with Captain Ben aren't over, and that's how that ends. And so, my thoughts on the story before we dive into Horrorland. I liked it. It's fine enough. It's just, if I separate myself from the fact that the cover was a lie and it just bothered me. If I had known prior, I would have been able to enjoy the story and just not think about it. But it's just, it bothered me enough to kind of slightly lower my opinion of the story. I just hate being misled like that. I understand why they did it, sort of, but I mean, come on, like there was no need for it. I mean, they could have made it an equally as good cover of Captain Ben and the pirates. You know, it would have looked just as cool. They didn't need to put, like, they could have come with something as cool as this. There was no need to have this bait and switch. It's dumb. But I like the story. I like Dr. Deep. I like Sheena and Billy. They were cool. Billy, I didn't go into this, but he has these fantasies that he's this undersea mutant, like this superhero that goes on these underwater adventures. Not too similar from Aquaman. So I mean, that's pretty cool. Like he's the more free-spirited, kind of crazy kid, and Sheena is more of the grounded character who's more serious, and she's there to keep Billy from going too crazy. And Dr. Deep is kind of like, he's this eccentric scientist, and they were cool. There wasn't enough time with Dr. Deep to really get to know him, but as he's missing through most of the story, so I can't really blame him for that. As far as I like the idea of the pirates. It's kind of cool. Even the twist with the plank, that was kind of funny in hindsight. And I like Captain Ben. It's just, there just wasn't enough time to develop him as a villain, because it's like as soon as they meet him, they run off, and then they meet the other pirates, and there's not enough time for him to really blossom as a villain. But from what I've gathered, he's going to show up multiple times throughout the Horrorland series. As you know, he's going to be trying to get his revenge after Sheena and Billy. So maybe it will get developed further. I don't know. And so we go into the Horrorland part where Billy and Sheena get free passes. You know the whole deal. They kind of skip forward instead of them just like showing them going to the entrance and all that. It quickly shows them already in the park and they're on their way to Quicksand Beach. It's funny that they want to go to there because before they fell into a sand pit on a beach, so it's fitting. And they even, it's kind of a little bit meta where they're like, you know, yeah, like we could have gone into any of the other attractions, but we decided to go into this one. You know, they go there and they meet up with the two girls from Revenge of the Living Dummy, Brittany and Molly, and they quickly become friends as they're both excited about the attraction of the Quicksand Beach. And so like it sucks them into the quicksand and until like it's like they look like their mouths are going to be covered and they're so deep. It finds out that they're just dropped into this tube and then they're just dropped down this chute and they're completely fine. As Billy and Sheena get out of the chute in the quicksand, but they're unable to find Molly and Brittany. And then they go to look around the park. They go back to the hotel thinking like maybe Brittany and Molly, after they got out of the Quicksand Beach, maybe they went back to the hotel. So they go back to the room and they try calling the room number where Brittany and Molly were staying, and they get like this familiar like evil laughter coming out of the phone. They try calling the front desk and then this is the same laughter. Billy like listens and is like, that sounds like Captain Ben laughing. And so that's kind of foreshadowing Captain Ben's show up again. They go downstairs to go to the front desk in person. Billy sees something around the corner and it's this cafe with this giant glass window. And they see Brittany and Molly like through the glass, but they look like really sad. They're like sipping on some drinks. Matt bumps into them and they try to, there's this door leading to a cafe but they can't open it, and there's this, looks like a slot for a key card. So Matt's like, maybe my key card will work, and it does work and they go through, and then all of a sudden they're in this pitch black room and they're looking through the mirror. Both Matt and Billy see their own reflection, but when they turn around to see Sheena, and Sheena's reflection's not there in the mirror, and she's not there in the room with them. And then Sheena's just like, oh my god, like I'm invisible now. And so now she's invisible. That's how it leaves it with that cliffhanger. When I first read the story, I was still upset about the cover and I wasn't really enjoying the story itself. And then when I got to the Horrorland part, I really enjoyed it because it was a reprieve from all that. It's kind of nice because even if you don't enjoy the main story of these books, you always have the Horrorland part to fall back onto, because that's always going to be entertaining, and it's going to get more characters are going to get introduced, and it's going to get more interesting. But now that I've looked back on the story, I really enjoyed it. It was pretty good. It's not as good as Revenge of the Living Dummy. I found that to be more interesting as far as the villain in the story is more fleshed out and more memorable, whereas Captain Ben is a completely new villain and he has yet to get developed as a villain, and there's not much exposure to him. But that will probably change as move on to Horrorland, and he'll probably show up more. And so yeah, it's pretty decent. I was still bothered by the cover being a lie, and that's kind of crappy, but overall it's still a pretty good read. Okay, and so I'm really looking forward to the next 2 weeks. This is going to be back-to-back Monster Blood. Next week, I'm going to review Monster Blood, the original. And then after that, going back to Horrorland with Monster Blood for breakfast. So that's going to be a lot of fun because I've already read both books and the Monster Blood still holds up. It's still really good. Monster Blood for breakfast is also really good. Maybe not as good, comparing the two. Because Monster Blood's just classic. But Monster Blood for cereal is pretty solid. I might even like it a little bit more than Revenge of the Living Dummies. It's kind of... But we'll see. So look forward to that. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this video, like it. Watch my other videos and subscribe to the channel if you really enjoy it. Alright, and I'll see you next week for Monster Blood.